Welcome to the 30-minute hour. It's the personal development podcast for the seven-figure entrepreneur who's looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Good to be here.
It is certainly a happy Monday. And it's going to be even happier once we get into this episode. I mean, we're going to be talking about this single mom who sells her business to Bill Gates and makes millions. So it's going to be a lot of takeaways. I mean, she went from an in debt situation to making millions, and I'm sure there was no struggle in between. I'm sure it was just easy and
Piece of cake, I'm sure.
she made one. She made a call to Bill. He said, "Oh, sure, no problem," and the rest is history. That's exactly how it happened. Not now. If it were only that easy, we're going to talk about the lessons from her story, and hopefully this will inspire you, the entrepreneur, who you may feel like you're stuck, frustrated, struggling right now. You're going to get some inspiration to know that it's possible, that your dream is still possible, and the things that you set out to do are still possible. So you definitely want to lean in and make sure you're taking notes on this episode. But this is not your everyday podcast.
Mm, no, we do it a little different. Yeah, we do it a little different.
Yeah, we didn't warn our guest, but I have a feeling she's not our everyday guest either. So
Laughs in the background. Yes, yes, yeah. I hope not. I mean, you tell me. I think the proof is in the pudding, and the question will go to the audience. What did you think?
absolutely. Yeah, no, I think we'll get along just fine in this episode.
We were already laughing in the green room before we got on. So yes, 100%. We're gonna get
Absolutely,
along.
yeah, for sure. We were talking backstage, and I can tell you're in for a treat. So you definitely want to buckle your seatbelt. But you know you can watch us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And then later you can go back and listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any of those other places that you like to consume podcast content. But I'm not going to belabor the point. We're going to get right to it. Again, a single mom sells business to Bill Gates and makes millions. I know you're on
Mm.
the edge of your seat. You're like, how in the world did she accomplish that? Well, we're going to go ahead and bring her on. She is a first generation immigrant who found herself $135,000 in debt. And as a single mom, she bootstrapped her passion for photography and into a highly successful global business and eventually sold it to Bill Gates in a multi-million-dollar deal. And then today, she's amongst the top 100 global thought leaders, according to PeopleHum, and one of the 50 must follow women entrepreneurs by Huffington Post. Please join me in welcoming to the 30-minute hour, Beate Chelette.
Ta-da! Jazz hands. Hi. I'm so glad to be here. This is gonna be a riot.
Yes, it is. Welcome. Truly an honor. And I still remember when we were talking on the pre-podcast interview, and you're telling me this story, and you're like, "Oh, I'm this immigrant," and then I sold my business, and I was like, so I was like, "Oh, absolutely, we have to have her on the show." So I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. So let's give people the backdrop and full perspective. So when
Mhm.
you were at the Institute of Photo Design in Munich, like what was your vision for your career back in those days?
Well, at that time, I thought that I was going to be a world famous photographer and that I'd be having, creative clients lined around the building, vying for me to take photographs in my signature style, creative way of doing things. And that was going to be it. That's what I thought at that time. And then it just turned out to not really be that way.
It was a little different. So how was it different from your from your vision?
So the story goes that when you are very young, and I was 17 when I went to the Institute of Photo Design, so I was really, really young. And I realized very early on that when you are a creative, it takes a lot of craftsmanship to come up and develop a style that's unique to you, that's recognizable. And I found that the business side of things just naturally became a lot easier for me. And I was on this like income sine wave, the roller coaster, which I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to. And so I had to figure out something that I could do where I would make a consistent income and but that was based on photography. And so I became a photo editor at first, a fancy sort of kind of cool zeitgeist, what we called it back then, magazine named Wiener. Whoever thought of that? And then afterward, we both host chuckle. And then afterward, we became photo editor at Elle magazine in Germany. And then I looked at this and I just didn't like fashion, the fashion industry very much. I thought it was filled with all the people that you think it's filled with, people that are obsessed with appearance. And I always wondered, how important something can be that changes a couple times a year, like fashion. But, I can't really say that out loud, because then other than that, everybody in fashion will hate me, because that's what they live by. What's next? What's the trend? What to look like? To me, it was very superficial. And that's when I decided that I needed to go on an adventure. And my adventure was, I'm going to do something that I've been too scared to do. And I actually went for the year abroad to Los Angeles, and then the year just never really ended. And I liked it so much here in Los Angeles that I stayed here, and then the real journey began. But in all books, by 23, as I'm running the photo department at Elle magazine, I was already very successful. I already was making good money. I mean, for a 23-year-old, certainly. But there was no way for me to go, so I had to figure out what comes after that.
Interesting. So if you could go back in time and talk to that younger version of yourself, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give her?
Just do the same thing all over again. I mean, that's really the story. I think that one of the things about my life or my story is I don't live a life of regrets. I have learned in the journey that I've been through, and I know we're going to touch on some of these things a little bit further, is that all these things were part of the creation of who I am today. And my dad taught me a very important lesson when I was a child. He says, at the end of the day, before you go to bed and you're in the bathroom, you're brushing your teeth and you look in the mirror, you're going to have to like that person who looks back at you, right? You can make stuff up all day long, but in that moment, when that person looks at you, your mirror image, you're going to have to be okay with who you are. And that's been, one of the mantras of my life. How do I become a likable person who likes myself, and how can I live with myself? And now I accept that all these pieces, including childhood trauma and all the bad stuff that happens, are just all part of what made me be who I am today. So what would I say to this young child? The person I probably would, as somebody who's gone through significant trauma as a child, with the abuse I went through, I probably would say that it may be very hard right now for you to understand this, but this is going to build the backbone that's going to enable you to really make change in many people's lives.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's just, it's that saying that everything is happening for you and not to you. And it's
exactly.
I'm the same way. It's like I go through and I look back at a lot of the hard times I've had, and it was bad, but I wouldn't change it, because there's a lot of those things I learned during those times that have gotten me to this point. I don't know if I'd be talking to you right now if some of those hard times didn't happen. So definitely we appreciate that perspective. So I am curious though. So how do you get to a point where you're like, $135,000 in debt, right? So how do you go from that point to the point where you're selling your business to Bill Gates?
There were a lot of one-syllable words involved. And it is a point where you kind of, so much has happened, and I'm, fires, floods, riots, earthquake, a tsunami, September 11th. I keep losing things over and over and over again. And then I'm in this crazy lawsuit, and the lawsuit settles, and I end up with nothing because I paid the attorney, I paid my debt, and then I have to go back into debt a year later to rebuild, which I could have saved myself that year of agony and just rebuilt. I would have had the same effect. And so you get to the point where you go, okay, well, I guess I don't have much of a choice at that point. I'm unemployable. And I needed to figure this out. I'm a single mom. I have a child. My ex-husband isn't really very involved, and I have to figure out how I'm gonna do all of this. And I found this. I had this idea based on the photography. Everything in my life just builds on the creativity and the photography, but always on the business side, where I represented photographers that were doing architectural and interior photography, including celebrity homes. And because I was an editor at Elle magazine in Germany, I realized, I used to be buying these stories, and now I was offering these stories. So I knew exactly what I needed to do to build up an international syndication network to license these stories. And everybody wanted these stories. I mean, who doesn't want to see Julianne Moore's house or Francis Ford Coppola's home? I mean, or Seal. I mean, these stories just flew off the shelves. However, I had no money, so I had to go into debt into building the business. And then there comes a point where I couldn't borrow any more money to pay the interest on borrowed money. I mean, now it's kind of like game over. And I fly to Germany to drum up some business, go to an industry conference. I mean, absolutely desperate at that point. And my father has a stroke. And my father did not have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer, and that had metastasized in his brain. And that tumor caused that stroke that then led to the discovery of him being terminally ill with literally 6 weeks to live. And so as I'm in Germany, and we, had buried my dad, and I'm standing at the grave, now remember, I'm $135,000 in debt. My best friend, my biggest supporter, my cheerleader, my number one fan, passed away. I'm sitting there, I'm going, what the heck am I going to even do? And then my phone rings. It's my office in Los Angeles. We've just been served a notice. So now being kicked out of the house that I was living in with that new landlord that took over, because, the verbal agreement that I could run a home office out of the house from the previous landlord was not in the lease agreement. And therefore, he threw me out. So I'm standing there, I'm falling on my knees, Eric, Ted, I'm raising my fist, and I'm yelling at God. I'm going like, dude, seriously, if there's a plan, this would be a really good time to fill me in, because I just didn't get it. I mean, it just was incomprehensible to me that at the end of all of this, that somebody would stand there and say, nah, the joke is on you. I mean, it just couldn't fathom that. But here I am, now I need to look for a bankruptcy attorney, because it is game over. I mean, at this point, it's just game over. And so I surrendered, I flew back, and I get a letter not too long after that from the White House. Now, the reason I got a letter from the White House is because in my absolute desperation, and because my former mother-in-law just wouldn't shut up about it, I wrote a letter to the President of the United States. And I get a letter from the White House. And so, my ex-mother-in-law, she goes like, you got to write to the president. He's your president. If anybody can help you, it's the president. Why don't you take it all the way to the top? He's the president of all the people. He's also your president. I'm like, fine. I'm going to write the damn letter. So I wrote the letter. I get a letter from the White House. And that put me in touch with a small business administration and the deputy chief director, not some underling, but the second in command. And when I walked in, I had my business plan written. I was prepared. I did all the work. I had my business plan. I had my portfolio. I had a track record. I, just had fallen onto really bad times. And I was willing to do what it takes. And so they helped me find a bank that took on my debt and restructured it, freed up my line of credit. 3 months later, I'm break even. 18 months later, I'm the world leader in my category. And that's when Bill Gates' company comes and knocks on the door and says, hey, Beate, can you tell us how you do it? And I'm like any decent woman, you want to know what I have, you're going to have to pay for that. And and they said, fine, how much do you want? And I said, millions. And they said, okay. And that's how I sold my company to Bill Gates for millions of dollars.
So this was 18 months. So in 18 months, you went from just being completely buried and in debt to selling the company to Bill Gates.
From game over to millionaire in 18 months.
Wow. And so, I mean, the whole time, were you believing? I know you said you were like, why me, God? But did you honestly think that, you know what? I know this is going on now, but I'm going to come out on the other side much better. I mean, what was your self-talk like when you were kind of in the low points?
Well, I mean, one of the big self-talk pieces I have is I will not drown in a puddle.
Huh.
It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
So if I drown, it's gotta be the ocean, and it's gotta be at the deepest end of the ocean. Otherwise, why bother? And so,
Brilliant.
I mean, come on, let's just get real. I mean, I see people that get like bent out of shape over $10,000. I'm like, you gotta grow a little bit of a thicker skin here, because I think what I realized at that point is that I looked at other people and I knew it was possible. I knew it was possible because I saw other people do it. And then a friend of mine who was a mentor, he sold his business for $70 million. And then, I didn't get anything near that. But he had a much larger operation. But he said to me, you're next, watch. And I'm like, yeah, right. And then he said something to me that is a really big, important piece of advice that I still give other people. You got to know your number. So if you're in business, you got to know what that number is that somebody needs to give you for you to walk away. Because when that day comes, the marker has been achieved and you do what you said you were going to do. I see so many people in the acquisition space that, go like, well, and then I'm going to sell it. And then they get the offer. And then they are, well, if I grow it a little bit more, I can get it a little bit more. And then the market implodes or the market conditions change and then they'll never sell. And so I knew when my number was met, it was time to sell. And that's how I set it up. Because after all the other disasters that I've been in, there was just no way in the world I was going to repeat that over and over and over again. And I knew if somebody was going to give me my number, I was going to buy a house and nobody would ever throw me out. I was going to put my daughter through college. I didn't have to worry about that. I could pay off all my debt. I knew exactly what I wanted. And so that's really how the story unfolds. It was, did I know I was going to sell to Bill Gates? No. Did I think that I could sell? Yes.
Now, you said a couple of things I want to highlight based on what you just said. Number one, you said, I love this. I knew it was possible because I saw someone do it. And it's funny you say that because I always tell people it has to be doable if somebody else is doing it. Right?
100%. 100%. So people go like, well, I don't know. I'm like, the model's already there. The model already exists. You have to emulate the model. What do you mean I'm so confused? You're not confused. You're making excuses.
Mm-hmm.
The model exists. Follow the model. Yeah, but I don't want to put the time and the money in it. Then you're not following the model. Then it's not possible for you.
Right. You have to follow the model. And there's somebody doing that. I mean, I think that's the value of mastermind groups and things like that, because there's somebody that's in your group that's doing what you want to do.
Yeah, I think the proper term for that is badassing. Yes, exactly.
Exactly what she said. So the other thing I wanted to touch on, this idea of knowing your number. So if we've got an entrepreneur that's watching us now, how can they find out what their number is? Is it a mathematical equation, or how do you know your number?
Well, your number is the number that you never have to work again. So it's really a lifestyle number. So I had a very clear idea of, so let's take 10 million. So if you sell something for 10 million, then 2 million of that is going to go into taxes. So now you're going to be left with 8 million. Out of those 8 millions, depending on how old you are, so let's say you're 40 years old, and you take your 8 million and you invest conservatively. So let's say for a 10% return on investment, which you can do in a brokerage, then that's $800,000 a year. Off the $800,000 a year, you're going to have to pay again taxes. And then, what is left over, and is that the lifestyle you want to live? So you really calculate this based upon what your lifestyle is. Some people say $1 million is enough for me because I just want to get out of the misery that I'm in right now, pay off my debt, and then make a down payment for a house. But I'm young enough, I'm going to do a second thing. Other people say 5 million. I think that the 5-6 million is kind of like the sweet spot for most people in the small business world that don't have these large operations behind, because it allows you to live off interest on, a 6 or multiple 6-figure amount, which is a good lifestyle for most people. Would I sell anything under $5 million? Probably not.
Good. Now, I think that's useful to know. And I always say clarity is the starting point of success. So I think you have to be clear, like you said, on what your number is. So that's great advice. So you're the growth architect and you're the founder of the Women's Code. So first off, let's start with the growth architect. What is a growth architect?
I know, right? So the growth architect is somebody who works with visionaries and thought leaders who have big ideas and need systems and strategies and build their authority to make their impact. And so what I do is I take people that oftentimes are all over the place, or they've done 10 different things and, over the life of their career. And there's so much there that they don't know how to package it, how to offer it, how to put it out in front of their ideal audience. And so I come in and I clean it up and I help them build the umbrella, design the strategy, create a signature growth system for them, which comprises all the things so that they can sell more often. They can sell at different price points, they can different products, and they can sell to multiple people that are at different stages. But it's all under one umbrella and a successful client transformation journey. So I'm the one who comes in when people are realizing they actually have to do the work.
Hold on. You mean there's work involved?
Yes. There's two schools of thoughts on that. So in mindset, or in the quantum leap philosophy, hard work, working harder isn't necessarily going to get you better results. But to do the work that is necessary to achieve a quantum leap, that is required. So I want to be very specific about that differentiation, because you cannot scale yourself. So if you're already working 14 hours a day, working 16 hours a day will bring you an incremental increase in result. But if you are using the time that you work to work the right way, or to set the business up so it can scale, now you can achieve quantum leaps. That's not working harder. People call this working smart. It just sounds a little salesy and, very internet marketing-ish. But there really is something along the lines to this.
Yeah, it's funny. So Ted, you and I, we talk about this all the time, about this whole hamster wheel thing. And a lot of times entrepreneurs think, the solution is just to work harder. But that's not always the case. Right, Ted? I mean, you and I talk about this all the time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be movement, right? You got to be making some progress. You got to be getting a pushing the ball down the field, right? If you're just kind of on this hamster wheel, just kind of spinning around, and every day you're exhausted and you've done a bunch of activity, but you haven't, the ball, you haven't moved the ball down the field. Then what have you really done? You have to know if you're not making movement, right? Because you can get up and you can do your routine, and the next thing you know, you're still not making the progress. And you have to know when to just say, okay, let me hop up off this hamster wheel for a second. Let me look at it before I jump back up on the hamster wheel anyway, right? It may be something different I need to be doing.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Is that not all activity is good activity or productive activity? So you have to be clear about on whether or not you do what you do because that's your program that runs because you've seen your parents work hard, or whether or not you're actually executing on a strategy. And that's why we come in, because we built the strategy, so you know what to execute on.
Yeah, that's excellent. Do you find, is it a lot of time just a matter of niching, and that, a lot of entrepreneurs want to be everything to everybody? Do you find yourself helping a lot of entrepreneurs to niche as opposed to trying to be all things to all people?
That is such a loaded question. So I have, of course, a lot of thoughts about this, as I'm sure you already assumed. So I have a theory, and the theory is that we are in an era of over-nichicizing, and I'm a de-nichicizer. I actually believe that there is a lot of value right now in people that can see the big picture, because everybody has gone so deep into the niche that most people can see the big picture. My brand specifically is anti-nichicizing. I'm a de-nichicizer because I need to see the big picture, and I need to be able to take everything that exists and organize it so that I can make it make sense. So I'm going to give you an example on how that looks like in the real world. So when I work with a client, so let's say, I have a digital marketing client. So he does digital marketing. So now people go, it's like, well, what do you specialize on? Is it Facebook ads? Is it YouTube ads? Is it SEO? Is it link building? Is it PPC? Whatever it sort of might be. So I look at their whole thing, and then I listen to them, and I find that this particular partnership, that they've been around long enough. This is not the flashy digital marketing place. This isn't the we promise you X and X and X and X. And when they hear about the algorithm, they just roll their eyes. I'm like, oh my God, here's the algorithm excuse again from internet marketers, right? Because they know better. So the algorithm changed, but really not that much. It's the same philosophy. They're just fine tuning X and X and X. And so I'm listening to this, and I'm like, okay, so we're going to build an umbrella, right? And so we had come up with a term, originally digital intimacy, on how to build intimacy between your prospects and, and the clients and their buyers on the internet. And how do we create this intimacy so people really feel connected to the brand through this particular kind of process. And now when they have a client, this digital intimacy piece is now the diagnostic, and says, well, where do you fall off, and has multiple pieces. And then we can diagnose on, well, you're not making an intimate enough connection to your buyer because you're in the internet marketing language. The language doesn't work. Your ads are too, are copying your competitor, and your ads don't work. So that we can do that. So I really look at this from a perspective of, as long as what you do is cohesive, and as long as I can justify that your leadership consultant, a online course provider, a VIP day strategist, a speaker, as long as I can justify all these pieces, all I really need to do is find the umbrella. We call this creating the signature growth system. and I put the umbrella over it, and then I can organize everything underneath of it. It's just that the signature system needs to have a name. So then you're not the leadership expert, but you're the creator of this system that takes your customer or your client through a transformation journey in 3 steps, 5 steps, 7 steps, 10 steps, whatever they might be. And that now becomes everything that you've done, but it's a natural progression to the next step.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I've heard that perspective. Most of the focus is on niching down further and further. So you're not only are you the growth architect, but you're also the founder of the Women's Code. So what exactly is the Women's Code?
Well, the Women's Code I designed because as a single mom immigrant and a woman leader, I've been up against a lot of really stupid stuff. And I think that people that are perceived as minorities, and I mean, women are 51% of the American population. We're really hardly the minority, but we act like one and we're treated like one. And I'm sure you guys can relate to this to some extent, on what that's like when you're constantly judged by the way you look or by what people perceive of you. And so I realized the deeper I dug into it and when I became successful is that a lot of it was in my control to take charge of it. And that I had to teach women first on how to be in control over what we do before we can go out and blame everybody else on what is being done to us, because our own behavior causes a reaction. And so if I'm in control of what I do and my behavior, now I have much more control over my outcome. And, getting women out of the reactionary part in the proactive leadership piece, that's what I created the Women's Code for.
So instead of reacting to say, hey, this isn't fair, this is a glass ceiling, just kind of you help them focus on taking proactive steps.
Yeah, I can give you an example, and you guys are going to probably crack up over it. So there is not a woman in the world that has not heard that sentence, "You are so emotional," or "Why are you reacting so emotional?" So I hope you guys never say this, of course, to any woman ever, right? Because you would not ever say something like this. So when somebody says to me, "You're so emotional," and as you can guess, I'm really not overly emotionally, certainly not when it comes to business. I have two choices. I can go and I can say, "How dare you, Eric, to say something like this to me? You are so and so and so and so, and you with your toxic masculinity, and have you ever heard of DEI and women, and I can go in a full-blown assault. And what's it going to do? Absolutely nothing, other than it proves the point that I just had a very emotional reaction to something that was oftentimes just said to see if I take the bait. Now, if I know that it's thrown out for me to take the bait, then all I'm going to do, and I'm going to just demo this. This is what I do when somebody says you're so emotional. I'm going to go, oh, that's a good one. So what I was just saying, as we go back to the interview.
Wow.
I'll make it sound like it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I go right back to what I was saying. It's a checkmate move.
Wow. Man. Okay. So please share a success story you have from somebody that applied your growth architect framework. They're in this the Women's Code. Now, what's your favorite success story?
Oh God, there's so many of them. I worked with a woman who was in an arranged marriage and wanted to commit suicide because it was so bad. And then she had read a quote about a motivational quote. And then she came to me and she says, "I want to build a business around providing people with motivational quotes." And then she built up an online business on how to, have these printed motivational quotes and either framed or in t-shirts, on jewelry. And, she did that and she sold it successfully. I have a woman who went through a divorce, a single mom who was in the medical aesthetics field. And, we literally crawled around on the floor and created a signature system. She's built a multiple 6-figure business. She has investors. She's now created a SaaS company out of it. I have another woman who is a data scientist, just smart as a whip, Black woman from New York, who's now in London, and wanted to design an ethical framework for luxury brands for their search engines, like super specific. And while I couldn't even understand half of the terminology she was using, but we succeeded in building a framework. She walks out 2 days later, she writes a $50,000 job. I mean, the story is just go. I mean, this is all about taking what people already have, helping them organize it, and making them, giving them the confidence to talk about it. So it's not about me, but the system that they create. And I mean, they go out and they sell.
Man, those are some amazing stories. So I am curious, because I know you get interviewed all the time just based off of your amazing story. Like, what's the one question that you never get asked, but you wish people would ask you?
I'm really glad you're asking this question, because nobody really ever asks this. And it's like, what does it really take? Now that let's just, be in our bathrobes with no makeup on and really talk about what does it take. It always looks great looking back and saying, yeah, rags to riches, middle class to success, fought, whatever. But what does it really take to do? What it really takes to do is an unbelievable amount of discipline and focus and a no BS attitude, because you think that, and even me today, and I'm a multimillionaire. I mean, the money's in the bank, I'm good, but I have committed to building this because I want to help people make an impact. My impact as a company is measured. It's in our mission statement, by the impact we help others make. So if I don't help people, I'm not doing what I said I was going to do. So even at this point, and talk to anyone out there, that fear factor that, can I actually do this again? Or does what I do matter? Does it make an impact? Cash flow crunch. How do I get through this? This never changes. The fear is your constant companion. You will never get over that. You will always have to do your daily practice of mindset. And the minute you let up, and I work with a mindset trainer, and he calls it the subconscious mind is insidious, because it always wants to, and he has it from Proctor, and it always pulls you back into your original behavior, the original fear, the original barriers that, your parents like, don't touch this, you're going to get hurt. Why don't you get a real job? What about health insurance? So you have these voices constantly in your head because you've been trained that way. That's your upbringing. It's your core operating system. To really master success, you have to learn on how to override your old operating system with a new operating system. And it only works if you run that system every single day. That's what it takes.
So is it just a matter of just constantly like working on your mindset, like with positive books, videos, maybe having a coach? What does it take to override the system from your vantage point?
Knowledge, skill. So there's 3 pieces: mindset, action set, and skill set, right? So number 1, do I have the mindset? Do I actually believe it? So the figuring it out is all great, but I mean, are you actually going to believe it? So that's why I always say, well, if somebody does, it must be possible. If it's possible, it must be possible for me. So then my question isn't can I, then my question is how can I? It's a very simple shift. So that's my mindset. Then my skill set. Do I have the skills to do this? So last year, I figured out in Q4 that I really needed to get my lead generation fixed, because my lead generation just wasn't good enough. It wasn't producing the results I wanted. Now in Q1, I am focused on my sales and my conversion. I invest in programs and courses to learn how other people do successfully what I need to master on how to do. And I have a strategy every single quarter. So you have to, in the skill set, you have to be clear. And I think Tony Robbins says, if you don't achieve a goal, it's because you don't have the skill set and you don't know how to apply yourself. So people go like, well, I should be able to figure this out. No, absolutely not. Why would you be able to figure this out? Like, why don't you go to somebody who's already figured it out? You just have to make sure it's not some scammy internet marketer, but it's actually a person who's actually done it verifiably. So don't fall for the so-called persuasive language. Go for the expert. And then the third thing is the action. I mean, are you taking the action consistently? Because that's the only thing you're going to have control over. So here I am last week, and I'm in a cash flow crunch. And because, whatever, I worked my butt off in Q4. I took some time off in Q1. Now it bites me in the butt. And so now I'm sitting here. I'm like, how am I going to do that? And I'm going like, where? I can't believe life is so mean to me. And what's the only thing I have control over is like, okay, well, let's restart my mindset program. I'm all cool, making all this money in Q4. Things are great. What do I need that for? Oh, that's right. You can never let up. Back in the habit. Skill set, learn the sales, just do the work. Action set, get on the phone calls, have these conversations, be out there, do the work. That's what it takes.
Mindset, skill set, and action set. Yeah, that's fantastic. And if that would be a good place to take notes. So those entrepreneurs who are watching this right now,
because they better be taking notes already. I mean, if not, what's wrong with you people?
Yeah, I mean these are some great points, and she's dropping some boulders of knowledge here. So you're also the author of the #1 bestseller, Happy Woman, Happy World: How to Go from Overwhelmed to Awesome. What will people gain by reading this?
If you have ever been with a woman, want to be with a woman, know a woman, you definitely will figure out what the playbook of the other team is. And as a lot of men have told me. So the concept of the book is, number one, I wanted to share my leadership principles for women and the difference between how women and men lead, so that people can actually have a tangible, applicable, component and saying like, this is how my life works, or this is what I need to understand how to work with women, or this is how women can understand to work with men. And then I developed the concept is full of concepts. So one is the superhuman paradox, where I explain on why people constantly chase perfection and what, and sort of the simple mindset shift that you can do to get out of this perpetual need to chase perfection. It's a very simple fix in the book, Happy Woman, Happy World. And then I talk about a concept that I've developed, another concept called ego rhythm. And that is to help people really understand what rhythm of life they're in, because you always want to be in a different one than the one you're in. And that leads to this perpetual dissatisfaction. And an example on that is that a lot of people in COVID entered a transition ego rhythm, where there was really a major transformation in their life, where they had to, come out on the other side with something new. And now that this transition ego rhythm, and a rhythm is usually about 3 to 4 years. And if you look at COVID, I mean, a rhythm is 3 to 4 years. I mean, it's like right in that time span, right? So we're now in a different rhythm after this intensity of the first 3 years of COVID. And what rhythm of yours is going to be next? And so I have 9 rhythms that I've identified. It's in the book, and you can figure out which one you're in and which one you may want to be in next.
Excellent. Again, that's Happy Woman, Happy World: How to Go from Overwhelmed to Awesome. Make sure you pick up your copy today.
Not tomorrow.
That's right.
Today.
That's right. Don't procrastinate.
Action.
Do it now, for sure. Okay. So we're going into our final segment. It's called Write This Down. And this is where each of us share at least one key takeaway from today's episode that we want the people to write down so they can level up? And we'll start with you, Miss Growth Architect, our guest of honor. What what should the people write down so they can level up?
I think the most important thing is write down what it actually is that you want. Because when I ask an adult, what is it that you want? More likely than not, I get a bunch of blank stares, a couple of like, let me think about this, a couple of hmms, uhs, wells. But if I ask a 5-year-old, Eric, how long do you think it's going to take a 5-year-old to tell me what they want?
Just like that, they can tell you.
Ice cream, truck, have daddy hug me, do my homework, whatever that might be. So somewhere along the way, we forget on what it is that we actually want. So you got to get very clear what you want. Do you want a lifestyle business? Do you want a laptop business? Do you want to travel? Do you want to spend more time with your family? Do you want to only work 3 days a week or 4 days a week so you can have some time with your kids? What exactly is it that you want to do? Because based on that, we're going to design the strategy for your business. If you don't have that, any strategy will get you there because it's relevant, because you don't know what you want. Then you'll always be searching for something that somebody says that fits into a non-existent strategy and say, yeah, speaking from stage, that sounds good. Well, why don't I invest some money in that? So that's what you want to write down. You want to write down, what is it that I want for myself and my family?
Write down what you want. And again, it goes back to being clear. And I'm just seeing this theme. It's all about clarity, right?
Yeah. 100%. It's like, how can you get there if you don't know where it is? I mean, if you and I were going to go skiing, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to go all the way to the top of the mountain. And then I'm going to look how I'm going to get there.
Yep. No, great. Fantastic. Write that down. Write down what you want. Okay, Ted.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all, still comes down to, just your vision, right? Whatever that vision is, it's your vision, right? No matter, how, big it is, how crazy it seems, as long as it doesn't seem crazy to you, right? That's all that really, it can't even seem crazy to you, right? But it's yours. And I just think long as you identify that vision, you stick with it and you continue to push and, you make it happen. You just make it happen. You figure it out, I always say, some, faith and hustle, right? So yeah, write that down.
Write it down. Faith and hustle. You got to have a vision. So my takeaway from this episode is that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right?
That would be great.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful if it was.
Oh my God, that would be awesome. I mean, look, if I just got back from Iceland. So if anybody's thinking about going to Iceland, just a quick hint: the name of the country consists out of 2 words. One is ice, and the other one is land. So it gives you a pretty good indication of what this land is about. It's ice land. That's the coldest thing I've ever done. And we went there in the winter. So if I didn't drive in that snowstorm, how would I ever appreciate the sun that comes afterward?
Yeah.
And now that I've been in this absolutely excruciatingly cold climate and I come back to Los Angeles, man, this is the best thing ever. So you can't appreciate what's always in front of you sometimes without having seen the other side of it. And I think this is really part of the character building.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, but again, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and the struggle. And so my big thing is the struggle's a part of your story.
The struggle is a lot of times the story.
Yeah, and a lot of times we think when we're struggling, we're getting off track. Like, hey, I want to go here, but now I'm facing this struggle so that means I may not get there. No, that's actually the struggles were actually what's going to take you to where you want to go, because you learn so many valuable lessons. So
I think that's a really good point that you made. The struggles get you where you want to go, because
absolutely.
if you think about the way a story is told, the story doesn't say Eric woke up one day a prince. And then a lot of really great things happened to Eric, and people gave him things and they supported him and everything was awesome. And then one day somebody handed Eric a crown and he became the king. I mean, what kind of boring story is that? There are no
Now,
dragons.
I'll sign up for that story. I mean, you know,
Eric said, what's not to like about that story?
right? I like it. Yeah.
Most stories are not like that. Most stories are dragons, enemies, warriors, fights, battles, wounds, despair, cold nights. That's just the story. That's the, you know, and the harder the story, the greater the outcome. So the question is, you know, you're going to go to a dinghy or a big yacht. I mean, when my ship came in, it was a nice little luxury liner. I'm okay with that.
That's awesome. So this is just another one of those episodes. This could be like a 3-hour show. I have so many things I want to ask you, but I know you have things to do.
Now you really want to ask me things, right? Now that we've gotten
yeah.
this far, and now you go like, wait. Now I have the real questions.
Yeah, now I got the real ones.
Those are the warm up questions.
That's why we were stretching before we were going in, right?
That's right.
That's why we stretched beforehand.
Stretch it out. Stretch it
out.
Oh man. So how can our followers best connect with you?
Yeah, so reach out with me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you find it. And you find me under Beate Chelette or The Growth Architect. While we're at it, I just want to make sure that everybody who's listening to this or watching it, that you please go and subscribe to this show and leave a 5-star review, because it is a labor of love. And these two gentlemen live off the thank yous and the thank yous alone. So make sure you thank them and tell them one thing you're taking away from this episode, and please share it with one other person. And if you want to find out, you know, what's your number one growth blocker in your business is, go to growthblockerquiz.com. It's a 3-minute quiz, and I can tell you exactly in a very short amount of time what the number one thing is that's in your way of growing your business. And if you have any questions or feedback or takeaway you want to share with me, please, by all means, do that. I'm here for you. I'm here to help.
All right. Ted, we need to have Beate back on the show. I tell you, everything she shared and just the inspiration she provided, it's just been fantastic. Thank you for sharing all the things that you shared and just sharing your insights. We've gotten several comments from Rudy Jackson and Kevin Koch, who've been following along the whole time. And they've been they want to thank you for all the things you shared on this episode. Speaking of sharing, don't forget to share the show.
Share the show.
Share the show. I mean, just one person.
That's right.
To yourself.
Just one person. Just make that your commitment. You're going to share it with at least one person. All this great information. Again, we want to thank Beate Chelette for being on the 30-Minute Hour podcast. Don't forget, you can go back and listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of those places you like to consume podcast content. That is our time for this week on the 30-Minute Hour podcast. Until next time, have a great one.